Hey everyone, great to be here. I think what's really interesting about what's happening in in the technology space is we're seeing a whole bunch of, experiences that we used to have on a desktop move into a mobile space. So this whole mobilization of our business processes, this whole focusing of our business processes and enabling our teams and our individuals and in fact our customers to participate in this is really coming to the fore. And what's interesting when you look at a lot of the buzzwords and the trends, that the things that have been around since the 60s in many cases. So the Internet of Things is another one of those things that we've been doing for a long time. There are factories that have literally had, been instrumented with network data, for a long, long time. So what we're talking about here is how do we innovate on top of that space. Our company Umajin is all about you imagine. It's this idea that you're trying to present a front end on top of this infrastructure that you've invested in for a long, long time. That's gone through many cycles. You've probably got production systems that are 10 years old, some that are newer, some that are still being rolled out, some that are in development. So this ecosystem that exists, we're all about trying to create much more tactical experiences on top of that. So just in terms of my my earlier comments, there are mature systems right now for doing a lot of the fleet logistics, factory management. A lot of the classical, obvious, really value-add solutions for IoT already exist and have been in place for a long time. And perhaps what's happening is those are being exposed better through RESTful APIs and integration with other traditional IT infrastructure. So how do we derive and grow the benefit on top of that existing investment that we've either made, are improving, or are planning to make in the future? There's this huge opportunity for innovation on top of those core things that you just have to be doing as a business. And I think when you see slides like this one, this is a recent one from Cisco, you'll see them all over the place on IoT, this 7.3 trillion, 19 trillion, can we make the numbers big enough? I don't know. There's all these devices are going to be connected, it's going to be amazing. But what does this actually mean? A lot of it, as I say, is the things we've already been doing. How do we take these things and this infrastructure that we've already invested in and allow us to innovate within the space of our staff and customers? So it's this idea of digitizing and mobilizing aspects of our business that previously required people to, have to engage in person, and instead they can now engage through some kind of digital channel. And then I think the second challenge that I'm going to address is those business processes. How do you do that without engaging in a traditional development life cycle? So even with the best, rapid agile kind of methodology, you're still talking about a pretty big investment to build front-end experiences. Now, what I'm going to talk about is this is not going to solve the problem of building the infrastructure you need underneath. So that still has to happen. This is about being innovative on top of it. So it's avoiding that additional cost and expense around these little tactical, role-based experiences that you need to deliver for your staff and your customers. And this is a really interesting diagram because this kind of describes the environment that many of us work in. So what we've got over here on the left is this whole soup. It's a heterogeneous mix of things that are maybe connected to the cloud. We've got a series of SaaS services that may be individual lines of department, potentially even regionally, are paying with their credit card. We've got servers that we've been moving from on-premise to virtualized. We've got a whole kind of host of different systems at different stages of their evolution. And the really big challenge that we get into is we start to bring that data across to our application. So if we're creating a traditional desktop or mobile or web-based app, we've got this huge level of connectivity between these multiple systems. And sometimes we're reading and writing, we're doing our best to avoid duplication. Wherever possible, we're probably doing read-only on a cache server that's maybe using some kind of timed output. But even over here, we've got a whole bunch of challenges. We've got framework code, we've got business logic, we've got different user experiences for iOS and Android. on laptops, on web pages. So this is fraught with a lot of challenges, and I'm sure many of you will have explored over time building apps using many different environments when it comes to the front end piece. There have been rapid application tools available once again since the 70s and 80s. I don't know if everyone remembers the big RAD boom when it was going to solve everyone's problems. And I think the interesting situation we're in now is, for the first time, this is actually a pretty well solved solution in terms of how we get access to that data. And not all systems have moved to a RESTful model, but what it does mean is it opens up us an opportunity to build these applications in a new way, particularly when we think of them as being very, very specific to one task. So this is a term that you may have heard from Gartner, and it's a term that we're excited about in terms of a concept. So what this is talking about is you don't have one or maybe two or three big applications. What you have is you have a mesh of applications that work together. And what's interesting about that is it really reduces the timeline and risk and rollout and training and a whole range of things. Because what you're saying is you're delivering an app, and all that app does is it lets you make a maintenance request or a maintenance and service request. So that means it only has to talk to maybe a couple of databases, maybe it talks to some physical hardware. So you can see down here, it can actually talk to physical things because these, our phones now have a whole lot of sensors and connectivity in them. It might be able to talk back to our IoT stack. Perhaps this app here is talking to one of your on-premise legacy systems. Maybe this app here is communicating with these two. And then where it gets really interesting is that you can actually have apps talking to each other as well. So rather than having to tie, for example, your Maximo asset management database to your Salesforce customer relationship management tool because you want to pass some flow of information between them, what you can do is you can say, hey, the tool we've got for the sales team that's talking to Salesforce, that little app can just push a bit of information across here so the person who's running maintenance knows they have to get in and update that piece of hardware or fix that demo or get that plane cleaned up, whatever that scenario may be. So what you're able to do is to create these very small, nimble applications which avoid you having to re-engineer or mess with your big underlying IT infrastructure. And just to give you a sense that this is a real thing, and I'm sorry for diving into a little bit of technical detail, and I apologise you won't be able to read this code from back where you are. But in our case, what we've done is we've created this visual tool which lets you lay out pages. On those pages you can place components. Those components can have behaviour or actions as we call them, and then you can bring in data feeds from different sources. And this example here, what it's doing, this top line here registers a new action, which is to get weather, and then this here calls a RESTful service to retrieve the weather for New York. This remembers the text box and the image that are going to be used, and then when the REST service returns successfully, it reads that JSON data and updates the text and the image. And then down here you can see the actual application. So for the designer or the business person who's using it, they just choose the action from a list. They get presented with two things they can choose, which is a text box and an image to present the results. And then over here, I've attached that action to my button, and this is the text and the picture updated. So the great thing about this is that you're not saying that developers aren't required. Developers are still there to help connect your systems, do kind of token exchange or security, or process information, apply business rules, apply currency transactions, whatever those things that you absolutely need to have as part of your business process. But what's great about this is you can now expose the control of the presentation and the workflow to your line of business units or to people who have got little problems they need to solve within your business. And I think that's a pretty revolutionary way of looking at the problem, and it's the way that most business works. So it's about saying, we're investing in IT, this is an important infrastructure, let's put some tactical control in the hands of the people who now need to come up with value-added solutions on top of this infrastructure we're investing in. RMAD is the term for this category of application builder. So very similar to RAD, they just added mobile in there. And I think there's two key areas that are called out within RAD, which is this ability to rapidly trial deploy, and then modify. So you can get in there and try stuff out. You're not stuck with a month or a weekly cycle. You can literally have things running in days and see how it's going and get feedback from your users. And then the other aspect is that you can customize it without needing developers, in the sense that developers have done that connectivity for you. So you've got the stuff you needed, or maybe you've asked for some more things, but then you're empowered to keep working on the business side. And then we've got a few other points that we think are really important for RMAD. And I think one of them is having best practice starting points. It's an unwise thing to have people try and reinvent the wheel from scratch. You're much better to start from, hey, here's a really good business process for managing an asset. And that way you've got an 80% fit that you can kind of adjust and make it work for your scenario. It's important that it can run on a whole range of devices, because you'll have people who still have, if you think of the history of IT, there's been a sequence of devices. You aren't necessarily in the privileged position of everybody having the latest thing you've rolled out. You might have some people with, laptops and Surface tablets, and some people with phones, and some people with Android, some people with iOS. So you end up with this heterogeneous hardware scenario as well. And that becomes all the more prevalent once you start including your contractors and your customers into that space as well, and exposing your business processes directly to them. And then I think another aspect that's really important is the secure and robust approach to connectivity. And in fact, if I just go back to this slide here, that's another important aspect to this, is you're not exposing the secure REST key to Maximo to anyone other than the people who need to access the Maximo database. So it's security by literally not making it available, which I think is the best kind of security possible. And then I think the other one is to have a library of common IoT and enterprise endpoints. So if you're going to really take advantage of IoT, you need to be able to quickly just grab those sources from, ThingWorks, Cumulocity, or whatever the back end you might be using is. And equally, if you need to read from enterprise systems, you need to be able to grab it from Pimcore or SAP or Azure or wherever those services are coming from. And then I think the goal is really to do this as an incremental process, which is a pretty exciting concept, because what you can start to do is to test this innovation within a control group. And you can do it potentially at a regional or at a line of business level. So it doesn't have to be done as here's a big play across my whole organization. If somebody finds this useful and adds value and they're loving it and everyone's doing it within that group, then they can share it with the rest of the group, and the rest of the group can say, I could take that, but I could change it. So as long as it's sharing that same JavaScript business logic layer, that ability to have different processes sitting on top of it is actually manageable, because it's all still going through your IT systems under the hood. So those systems are still being submitted into Maximo or SAP or the core data structures underneath. It's really just the workflow on the top and the presentation layer. Once again, start with proven solutions. Definitely, you can't underestimate the training and rollout costs. We were involved with a project where Oracle Financials was rolled out to a university, and they were expecting the average staff to log into the Oracle Financials, go to the requisition form on menu 16 of the sub-menu of the third menu in, and it was a pretty intensive training process required, and plus it was risky because you were exposing aspects of Oracle Financials you might not necessarily have wanted to. The idea here is you would just have one thing that said, I want some pens and some new stationery. So all of a sudden you don't need a whole big training process to roll it out to all of your staff. So I think that idea that you have a whole series of apps that are really, really targeted to a role, and then based on things like Active Directories, those apps become available based on their job position. So it's actually very straightforward to manage using some of the amazing app deployment tools that are out there. And then I think within this incremental approach, what it also means is you're not risking a massive investment. These are literally, the same kind of business decisions people are making within lines of business and regionally all the time. I'm just going to give you a few examples of the kind of things that people are doing with this. So this is an Internet of Things kit we've done with Intel and WPP, the very, very large advertising agency group. And this literally comes with a whole series of pieces of hardware that you can play with. So I'm going to show you some of that now. So in this example with the Lexus, what it's got there is a Intel RealSense 3D camera. And what it's actually able to do is to, like a Microsoft Kinect camera, it's able to read the person standing in front of it in 3 dimensions. So it's tracking my hand. I can control the user interface just by moving my hand around the space. And particularly in a dealership where you have a very large screen, it's impractical to touch a very large screen. And then the great thing about that is you can do all of this cool stuff with it. So I walk in, it recognizes my face, it can alert the service manager that I'm here to pick up my Lexus, which has had some work done, or maybe I've ordered some parts from the kiosk, so the inventory manager can come out and drop those off to me. It's got my history on it, so I can also move forward on my loyalty program as well. So it becomes part of the digital hub, and it also works with the app that I have on my phone as well. This is really interesting. So digital wayfinding is a real opportunity, not just in the retail space, but in a whole range of organizations. So in this case, as I walk around a store, it's able to track me and show me where I am, so I can help find different departments. And in the case of the Kiwi experience, the opportunity to drive around New Zealand, so they have all these buses that tourists take, and you buy a pass and you can use it for up to a year and get on this bus at any time. And using this app, you can actually go in and you can book tourist activities. And the cool thing about it, what's on in Auckland? Oh, I'd like to go bungee jumping. So as you walk around Auckland, it's actually finding where those activities are and helping you locate them all. And then you can pay for them within the app as well. So it's pretty interesting that wayfinding can be constrained to a store, or it can be literally constrained to a country. The Skywalk is crazy. I think the other interesting thing is that this is now really changing the way hardware manufacturers look at this challenge. So previously you would have bought a RFID or barcode scanner with a fully integrated screen and keyboard unit. Now you can get something like this Zebra Sled. It's got a full RFID read-write capability, 1D and 2D barcodes, and it just syncs via Bluetooth directly to an Android or an iOS phone. So what's really exciting about that is you can take all of the infrastructure that may have been invested in by potentially your suppliers, by other people in your supply chain, things that you've used during the manufacturing process, and you can now use those in other unique kinds of apps you might want to create on top of that. Instead of being locked into very vertically orientated, kind of complex, long cycle build apps, you can now build these really quick apps. And the cool thing about it, they can talk to your other systems as well. So I've scanned this product, I can see where it's at, I'm going to submit this into one of my other enterprise systems. So it's this ability to glue the internet into your edge devices. There's some really interesting stuff happening around office refit, building refit. This is a lighting trough. You literally can replace your fluorescent lighting rack with an LED rack, much more power efficient. And then on the side here is a whole series of IoT devices. So we've got there an occupancy sensor, so it automatically shuts down your lighting if no one's in the room. It's got a beacon, so you can use it for wayfinding and occupancy information. And then there's a whole range of other ones, including gas sensors and so on, so you can test for the air quality within the rooms as well. I've got actually, we'll be able to show this a little bit later on in a live demo, but this is a really interesting example. So they've got a technician who takes an expensive Seika Wave, well, it's very reasonably priced laser scanner, but it's a big effort to do this, and you laser scan a pipe for oil and gas to look for corrosion, and it generates this 3D data. And the challenge was that then sits on that machine where the technician has done the analysis. And what we've been able to do with them is to be able to export that as a live 3D view that anyone in the business can view on their phone or their tablet. And it really does just open that information up for a much broader audience to use and consume. So I think this whole idea that things that used to be in silos, you can now break it out and use it across the organization more broadly. And I think the other thing is really summarizing. So the tool itself is extremely technical and complicated, as you'd imagine. The people viewing the data, they just want to see the summary. Where's the problems? What's the depth? What's the main things I need to look out for? Where's my 3D model? So you can really hit those high notes and once again link it into other systems. In terms of some of the big takeaways, I guess one of the things I'd really like you to think about is that mobile applications delivered in a way that is more cost effective and in a timely fashion give you a huge opportunity to get value from these investments that you're making in your infrastructure and in the IoT infrastructure that you're putting in place, or are thinking of putting in place. And that there are ways to manage some of these architectural challenges, and I think that this idea of these lightweight apps that are really focused on specific tasks are very much a new opportunity, and they've really started. You can see consumers have adopted that approach. You know, you pick up an app from the app stores, and that's usually it just does one thing. Very focused, doesn't have a help manual, and that's the kind of expectation our millennial and our digital natives are expecting. So as you get a high proportion of those in your business and your departments, thinking about business problems, that's a very natural way of looking to solve it. We did a presentation at the Toronto University, did a presentation at Stanford, the design school, the MBA program there, and probably 95% of the business challenges that those business students were looking at, that they, for their own projects, were, Uber for new mothers, or Airbnb for dogs, or, they were all app-based concepts. They were thinking about how they could take common business problems and help solve them with little wee focused experiences on a device. So I think if you think of your business like that, how you could empower your contractors, your internal staff, your customers to participate in a dialogue and a process, you're bubbling those steps up. You've got approvals. You've got, you could have an app that for the end consumer has one focus. If you think of something like Uber, which is to hail a car, but then there's also an app for the driver, and maybe there's an app for the supervisor. Maybe there's an app for the person who has to go and do the maintenance request. So you actually build this mesh, this ecosystem of very, very small, lightweight, small number of connections, and as a result, if one of those apps goes down or the back-end system has to change, you're only changing, maybe 2 or 3 apps, and it's a reasonably trivial plumbing discussion, rather than having to rebuild an entire monolithic app. And I'm sure, as all of you will have found when rolling out a new system and you're trying to get all these things to line up right, and we can't put this live until this has gone live, and the bank has to confirm this feed is, ISO compliant. So what this is effectively saying is all of that investment that you have to build in that underlying infrastructure, and that is improving, but it is still a challenge, and you've got to get that right. This allows you to be much more nimble on top of that. And then I think starting from proven use cases. So we've been working on this for a while with a whole range of companies as we kind of test out and scale out our product suite. And what we've really found is that it's much easier to take something that's already kind of doing something really logical and sensible, and then tweak it. And I think you've seen that in the industry, and big players who have done ERP solutions have leveraged that same concept for a long, long time. And we're really interested in establishing and finding more use cases. So hopefully it's the kind of thing that we'll be able to get going as a bit of a dialogue. So I've got my email address up there, so if anyone's got any really good ideas, do send them through. And we're going to have a booth over at the expo at 5:08. And what I'd like to do now is to switch over and maybe just give you a couple of quick live demonstrations, and then break into some questions. In fact, what I'll do is I'll show you. This is running on a laptop, and I know you won't really be able to see this from back there, but this is it running on an iPad. So literally, I'm in the editor running this application, and if you just pan around and zoom a bit, so you can see there's that real-time data running on multiple kinds of devices. And what's really interesting about this one here is that, as you can see, there's different kinds of scans. In this case, this is a dent in a pipe. I can literally find the depth and the strain and all that summary information that I need to know how to deal with that situation. This is a really interesting, this is a textured scan. So this is a type of pipe, a type of corrosion that's caused by salt. So it's caused these really interesting striations. There's a flange around the outside, which is part of the scanning process. And if you go to the next one, and this is a welded joint. And what we've actually done here, if you click the visualization button for me, just click it once more. There we go. So this is the original composite scan. So this was scanned from about 16 different scans to get this whole welded joint. So this is a very large area that's being examined. And then if you click on the visualization again, when we send it to the green and blue here. So what we're doing now is making it much easier for the engineers in real time on their phone to be able to see what's going on. So they can literally see the 3D profile and the depth of those of that corrosion around that weld joint. In fact, I can see that primary corrosion is actually 45% of the way through the pipe, which is a little terrifying, knowing the pressure those oil and gas pipes run at. Now, the great thing about being inside the environment is if you stop this project, so just hit stop for us, is you can see all of the things on this page. So if you click on, for example, the 3D image on the right, literally there it is, and if you just drag that around, it's just a piece on a page that I can play with and put wherever I want. I can change its properties, they're all on the left. It's a very, very common metaphor, very similar to kind of a Photoshop or a Keynote kind of experience. And now let's try opening another application. So just pop in there and open up the Chanel application. And go to the second page, perfect. So what's really interesting about this application, this is a retail application built for Chanel. And one of the challenges they had at point of sale is that they were handing out bits of, for many years, white tissue paper that they would spray with perfume. And the idea was you'd take that perfume home and smell it for the next 12 hours, which is the time between the three notes, apparently. I probably know too much about perfume now. And the result was you'd make a decision on which one of these perfumes suited you. And the challenge was that people took that bit of tissue paper home and they forgot which perfume it was, and in general it was a pretty poor branding experience. So what we were able to do is in this kit, we've worked with a company called TouchCode, and of course with Intel and WPP as well. And this is just a normal piece of printed material, but what's been printed inside it is conductive ink. And the cool thing about this is when you touch it on the screen, it's able to recognize a series of touch points. So it's literally like it's projecting my body's electromagnetic field through this card, and it's like I touch the screen with a certain pattern on my fingers. So there's little dots on here that represent these different products. So if you go to the, exactly, so for example, when I touch this code, it would know it was Coco Mademoiselle, and when I touch this card, it would know it was Coco Noir. So what's interesting about that is I've now got printed cards with tissue on one side, the branding on the other. You touch them either on the in-store kiosk or on your phone at home, and it will bring up product information and videos in the language of your choice. So it really has sort of opened up that whole experience from being a very poor, unbranded experience to being something that's pretty interesting and compelling in a retail space. And I think what's interesting about that is that's, it's currently an experiment, and that may go worldwide or it may not, but it hasn't been a massive investment. So they've been able to pick up a kit like this and actually try something out. And I think that as a rule of thumb, that's, I guess, what I'd like to encourage from this session is the idea that, experimentation, as long as you can constrain that cycle of effort and cost, can be extremely valuable, particularly with something like IoT, where there's a huge amount of hand waving. Look at what the $17 trillion, what can this do for me? There's the really obvious things. It's going to save me 2 cents a mile on gas for delivery. But what's it going to do in these other areas that people are promising these nebulous returns from? And the challenge is you have to find those within your business. So, thank you very much, everyone.